If you could gather physicians in one room, which we'll be doing at our physician retreat, what is the conversation you believe doctors most need to have with one another right now? That's what we're talking about today. If you're a doctor, healthcare leader, or patient, you belong here. I'm Kim Downey, and this is Stand Up for Doctors Conversations at the Intersection of Connection, Courage, and the Future of Healthcare. And by way of a brief introduction, Dr. Frank Cacace is a retired primary care internist looking to help primary care not go extinct, and that is critical. We all need primary care doctors, so thank you for your important mission. And Dr. Eric Olson is a retired orthopedic surgeon and the founder of Integrative Orthopedics. And a few things that you have in common that I've shared with you because you're just meeting for the first time today is that you're both married to physicians. I believe you both attended school in New York City. And I'm very excited that you're both attending our upcoming physician retreat, which was the spark for this conversation. So, welcome, and I would like to know what you'd most like our audience to know about you as we begin our conversation. Eric, would you like to go first?
Sure. Well, I'm, as you mentioned, a retired orthopedic surgeon, but my wife and I were very involved in integrative medicine. She founded an integrative medicine group when she realized that a lot of her patients' needs were not the things that fit into the boxes that she learned that uh, were the diagnoses and the standard treatments for people when she was at the National Institutes of Health. And it led her to look for what are the things that people really need and embrace mind-body medicine. And she founded an integrative healing group where for 17 years we met with people who were uh, alternative providers, doctors of chiropractic, people who did functional medicine, people who did massage therapy, and also shamans, people who did polarity, people who did myofascial work. And working with all naturopaths, we did a couple of things. One of them was we had people that learned all about, we had case presentations where a person would come with a patient that they had trouble with, and we would all give our input. But over time, what that did is it gave us trust in each other and allowed me to learn as a conventionally trained orthopedic surgeon who I could refer my patients to help them with things that were outside of my domain rather than just saying, get out of my office, you don't need an operation. And so I've incorporated that throughout my practice, things like breathing techniques, helping people do pranayama before they had injections, helping people with mindfulness as a way of helping them to be able to cope with stress and the stress of surgery. Also, teaching posture is a really important body-mind, not just a mind-body problem. So that's a little about me. And I've been delighted to be happily married to my wife, Beatrice, for 43 years this month.
Oh, congratulations on that. And I do love that you're a conventionally trained orthopedic surgeon and that you have an open mind and that you've seen the benefits to exploring what other people have to offer as well. So thank you for sharing that. That's important. And Frank, what would you like to us to know about you?
Um, Dr. Eric Olson and Beatrice have 10 years on me and Ruthie. Uh, we, 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 we met, we met in anatomy lab at New York Medical College. Um, she thought she wanted to be a geriatrician and fell in love with a cancer cell at Sloan Kettering during our residency, and she is now a bone marrow transplanter. Um, and I am a general internist. I just never stopped thinking about primary care. I'm recently retired. I had a 33-year run taking care of a pretty large patient panel size, and I served as an associate program director in a large internal medicine residency at North Shore Hospital on Long Island, uh, which subsequently merged with LIJ and became the big the big Alexander the Great Northwell after that. And I I was an associate program director of a 115 doc residency for 15 years. And then a few years after that was asked to be in leadership, our division of general internal medicine, 4 sites, 33 docs, 2 clinic sites where the residents were taught their outpatient medicine. Um, I I was the associate chief for education for that division that provided all of that infrastructure for the residency. So we were a side by side practice, a faculty practice and the residency practice, which has since merged to become one. Um, and so I looking back, I'm really pretty blessed. I somehow found what I was put on this earth to do. I being at a bedside and being across the desk, precepting. The word is precepting in our neck of the woods, where we'll listen to a resident formulate their thoughts after seeing a patient, and then go back in and finish up part of the exam or demo a communication technique. Um, but the feeling you get when you get them good and ready for independent practice is just, it's like a beautiful feeling. So those were the 2 things that sustained me. And I'm newly retired, and those circumstances were rough. I am not thrilled that I left a little sooner than I was otherwise going to leave, but I have a feeling a lot of what went into that is core to your mission, Kim, and core to like some of the conversations we may have here right now. So I'll say I'll stop now. Except go Mets, I'm suffering, and I'll also say that one thing that also sustains me on the outside is I love sitting at my piano.
Mm, mm.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing all of that. There's so much I could say to that. My husband would feel your pain. He's also a Mets fan growing up in New York. And what I was thinking about the specialties of you and your spouses, it was an endocrinologist that found my thyroid cancer. So I'm indebted to endocrinologists. And he orders one of the medications that keep me alive. And Beatrice knows my endocrinologist, and he's actually coming to the retreat with his primary care physician wife. So that is something that's exciting. And then, of course, I've recently had cancer 3 times, so I'm indebted to clinical specialists such as your wife, Frank. And then it was my primary care doctor who found a lot of things that happened to me a few years ago. So primary care is just so important. And I'm half afraid to say it out loud because I've seen over, I don't know, like $46 at the doctors in the last few years, but I have not yet needed the services of an orthopedic surgeon.
May it
So
remain that way.
yeah, yeah. And also there is at least one other doctor, probably more coming, who have been involved in residency programs, and you'll love to connect. Ryan McCarthy immediately comes to mind, Frank. So that's something that I know you guys will be able to connect on. So yes, as we go back to our opening question here, what's the conversation you believe doctors most need to have with one another right now?
Well, I would say that it's really about self-care and the importance of self-care and the components of that, which I would emphasize, and I'll be interested to hear what Frank has to say, is sleep. Uh, in your residency, you don't have much choice about that, but the importance of a regular bedtime is remarkably important for wellness. Um, your diet is obviously very important and underemphasized in our society as a preventer of disease, and the cultivation of a good gut microbiome, a very important part of wellness, and something that I did with my patients before I would operate on them was trying to help them to mitigate the potential risks by getting them as healthy as possible and not operating on them until I felt those had been maximized. But that applies to physicians as well in a stressful environment, really choosing to have put into your body the nutrition that you need at the right time. I think meditation is something that everyone should learn if they have any interest in it at all in a regular meditation practice. Even on a busy day, I would typically, when I was seeing patients, go to my car instead of eating lunch, and I'd sit in my car and I'd meditate for about 20 minutes as a way of rebooting myself for the afternoon. And also in the OR, if there was a downtime, I would sit quietly and try to be present in the moment. Um, Getting enough exercise, whatever it is that we truly love to do, whether it's walking, running, whether it's essentially any sport that gives you pleasure. I love frisbee. And then I also would, the last thing I would emphasize is posture. I really believe that by holding your body in the right posture, it actually activates your brain to have a better mood.
I love all of that. I'll let Frank respond before I do.
It's funny how when I reflected on some of the prompts, looking back on the 3 decades into the fourth decade, my answer evolved. My answer would have been different in each phase of the career. Um, I guess I guess if I gave you the freshest perspective, looking back, the indivisibly most important thing to me, particularly when I was at my most stressed doing this work, was always availing myself of a core of people in the know, um, who could we could hear each other out and we could validate each other and we could think some things through and we can recognize in each other that we needed some space, that we needed to step back, that we needed to pick up the phone instead of just do it on a chat. um and the champion of that for me my whole life is my wife. Rue has a very different way of tackling stress than I do, and thank thank goodness she's stayed patient with me. But Kim, I think if I would get very personal with those last few years, I clearly had a depressive episode. I needed my first sabbatical 28 years into my career. So I think that would also be part of my answer, is like always be having this self dialogue. Um, remember your oath. And actually, Eric reminded me when he was talking about self care, you know, it's deliberately there. There's a line in the oath that part of your oath is to try to take the best care of yourself so you could take the best care of people. And I don't think I did the best at that. I just kept putting my head down, plugging along, and handling the stress of being a clinician educator. That my professional identity formation was I was a clinician educator. So just as much as I was busting it to take good care of people, I was busting it to take good care of my learners. And it's easy to get all overwhelmed day to day, and it's easy to lose yourself. So the conversation would be about we're in a we're in a field. I hate the word industry. I can't stand it, but we are in a world, a work world, where we can easily lose ourselves. And so a lot of self dialogue, a lot of self grace. Have your nucleus of people who are in the know about, the dreaded RVU and the dreaded productivity contract crap, and so that you could just be always be talking things through. The greatest relief that, it wasn't just medicine that got me out of uh, my mess. Really, it was a mess. It was people. It was people in the know. So those would be my words.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I say all the time that every time a doctor shares their story, another doctor feels alone. So there's doctors that will be listening that will see themselves in your stories or parts of your stories. And that's so important. And what I absolutely love about the retreat, we'll be hosting 46 physicians. As of today, we have 35 spots filled. So we have room for 11 more doctors, and they're all willing to share their own real stories and to have these deep and meaningful conversations. So it's going to be healing for doctors. And then it also, by supporting doctors, we support patients, right? Because you have to be at your best in order to give the best care to patients, or even beyond, as you're extending, into retirement. And so many, we do have some other doctors, as both of you are retired, and that are coming as well, because they still want to make a difference and still think it's important. So I love that too, that we have everywhere from early-ish career physicians coming to retired physicians. And speaking to what Eric said about self-care, and the first thing you mentioned is sleep. And I've had Dr. Jose Mendez on twice. And at first we talked about how when doctors to know to refer their patients to a sleep medicine specialist, because he's a pulmonologist and sleep medicine specialist. And then we did another whole episode about doctors and sleep issues, because for many reasons, many of his patients are doctors. And Jose will be at our retreat.
Right.
So you'll get to meet him in person and have these conversations. And also how you mentioned, the diet, meditation, exercise, posture. I've been following a doctor on LinkedIn now who talks a lot about ergonomics and surgical ergonomics, and that makes a huge difference. And sometimes surgeons are forced to end their practice early if they have injuries themselves related to, poor posture, because the setup isn't optimized for them. So these things are critically important. And Frank, speaking to what you said, Jamie Gross is also coming to our retreat from the UK, and he's going to help facilitate our physician advocacy center. And he himself shares that he reached a low point, and then he started Medics in Control. He tried to figure out what can doctors do, starting with himself, to get themselves out of this, or to come back, or to just better themselves, right? So then he's still practicing, he's an anesthesiologist, to take better care of his patients. And he also said it starts with self-care, going back to what Eric said, right? And he says it all starts with that. So you have to optimize that, and then you can look into other things, whether it's finances and things like that. So Eric, if there's anything you wanted to add to what Frank said, and then we can also get into Frank, what he's doing to help primary care not go extinct.
I would just add, in terms of quick things that can bring healing for both for patients and for doctors, is exposure to nature. There's pretty good data now that shows that just a short amount of time in nature provides benefits that exceed what both patients and doctors expect. So in England, it's frequently used as a therapeutic modality, but in the United States, not so much. But for physicians, if you can find a place that is close to your life, that you can go and walk and experience wildness and nature, I would say that that's a very quick way to recharge oneself.
I'm smiling because I watch I watch Ruthie get in the car in the morning, and she's about to have a long, rough day, and she's been doing two things regularly. Um, there's a tree pretty close to where the car is, and she walks to that tree and she puts her palm on the tree, and she just stands there for 10, 15 minutes. And I see a dialogue, happening. And then I watch as she steps up on the platform of the car. I watch her look up to the sky and take like the deepest inhalation, and then lets the slowest exhalation out. Um, so my wife has her mini habits lately that to get her through.
Well, Frank, they say about orthopedic surgeons that we are smarter than rocks, but we are not as smart as a tree. So Ruth may be getting some good insights.
I love that, and I love that you're also sharing that these are really truly basic things that are accessible to anyone and that they do make a difference, right? That your doctors, and you're saying this, it's not some like psychologist saying all these woo things like, oh, do this, go hug a tree, right? That there is science behind these things. And even I believe there are research articles about like literally hugging a tree, right? So just being in nature and hugging a tree, these are really important things. So thank you for sharing. And go ahead, Frank.
You know, Kim, I think for me, I find a lot of that, and I just sort of match up to my day's experience or to what's my anticipation of the next day back when I was working. If I sit with my ear pods and I blast Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto on a day that I'm feeling pretty existential, um, or if I throw "Taking It to the Streets" by the Doobie Brothers into my ears when I'm feeling like I need a little advocacy reminder, I just would have you guys know that for me it's music, and
Mm.
the improv that happens in jazz, which is a newer genre for me, very much mirrors the interplay, the unannounced interplay that's just not planned for interprofessionally in a good primary care doc's office. And meditating on that, using the word meditating in a different way, I got to tell you, was a key for me to get out of a rut. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I had an $8 split piano and violin lesson in Brooklyn, New York, between grade 3 and grade 12.
I love that. So, just as important as the topics we'll be discussing at our retreat, and again, it's no lectures. The doctors will speak about 10, 15 minutes their topic, but then we're great breaking into groups. So, you all will be able to have time to have these discussions, right, in groups. And in between the topics are activities. And I shared in my last episode where I also featured two physicians who are coming to our retreat and I introduced them to each other is a book that Beatrice has, Your Brain on Art, How the Arts Transform Us.
Yeah.
And it's the science, the brain science behind why all of these things do change your brain and are essential,
Yeah.
from art to music. And music is going to be a very important part of our, we're incorporating all of it from dancing, and everything is optional, but they're half-hour sessions, so you can, it's like a sampler platter, so you can feel comfortable trying it. And in meditation and music throughout the weekend. So during the breaks, we're going to have music. So we're going to ask doctors ahead of time or once they get there, what's your favorite music? So during the breaks, we can play all of it, whether it's jazz, whether it's rock. And Saturday night at our gratitude dinner and celebration, we will have music and dancing and ice cream. And so that'll be great. So I would love, we'll have to talk more about music, Frank, because I was also going to offer if any physicians coming are also musicians and can bring their instrument with them, or if I could provide it. I probably can't access a tuba, but if we needed like a keyboard or a guitar or a flute or something during the breaks, we might be able to have some live music as well. So if you've got a keyboard you can put in your car, you're in. So Frank, is there anything else that you would like to share? Because we all know, primary care doctors really are a backbone of healthcare, and we need to support our primary care doctors need our support. Was a study that says something like they have 28 hours of work to do every day, that it's only 24 hours and doesn't include them sleeping or eating or going to the bathroom or any of those things. So what's your take on that? And also, as you become part of our Medicine Forward team, I feel to move some of this mission forward.
So, I'm hoping there are patients who listen to your podcast. Just, just an awareness out in the world that the richest country in the world spends 5 cents on the dollar, on the healthcare dollar, to support pediatricians, geriatricians, family medicine docs and internists. And for as long as we as a group are not allowed off of the financialized wheel, the forced interface between patient and profit, mission and margin, if primary care docs aren't allowed to step off of that, then we will forever, because of the 5 cents on the dollar, be less attractive to graduates from medical schools and residencies. So we're having trouble on the recruitment side, and I feel a little guilty about this, right? We're having a little trouble on the early retirement side just because of how sustainable it is, and in my mind, a pretty quiet struggle with mental health in a lot of primary care docs, and they leave, and so then systems don't necessarily hire to replace the doc that left. So then the panels are being absorbed by the docs left behind. This is not the place to do quarter by quarter, like, you know, nitty gritty business thinking. It's not in primary care. If it must be that we can't look at primary care as infrastructure, honestly, like water and electricity and air and the opportunity, to be happy and take care of yourself. I mean, these things are infrastructures. One would think. I mean, we belong in that list. And for as long as we're uber capitalized and commodified, um, in the world of a CMS that is kept to budget neutrality and kept with artificial caps, then we relatively just can't do well. We can't look to our employers. 3 out of 4 of us are employed. We can't look to our employers and show them on short-term ledgers that we're looking nearly as good as the other departments of a big system. We just never can. And I don't understand what the myopia is, from top to bottom, that folks can't see. Folks in with at the levers can't see that that is just a truism that won't change for as long as we remain financialized. So the contracts and the productivity and the never being able to finish work at work because we're not given snippets of time in between sessions or in between patients to triage the extra communication coming in, the intervisit work coming in.
Mhm.
So I really think that half of what makes primary care more viable one day comes from organizing amongst ourselves. So if we're going to be looked at as a labor unit, then I think unionization, which is tough, it's like herding cats, but unionization is part of the answer. And then the other part is from legislation. So honestly, I think primary care needs a lobby as strong as some of the other lobbies and as money backed as some of the lobbies. And we're all going to need it. Every patient needs it. They need navigation, coordination. They need their home doc. They need the doc who knows everything happening in their lives and how that interfaces with their vulnerabilities to chronic disease and how their screening should be done. Everybody's going to need it. So I think that patients then need to join hands with us because we're struggling to get the levers pulled in our direction, at least somewhat. So I think that if we're side by side with patients, either by a patient protection bureau, a new part of the governance of healthcare that thinks about the primary care patient a lot more than it does now. I think there's plenty of room for a lot of innovation there. And I think patients at least being aware and then understanding how to talk to their legislators, how to talk to the employers of their physicians. I think patients have so much more power than they realize. And I think that being in a crazy system, they're often overwhelmed with their own medical issue and very overwhelmed with how to navigate the system, and then sort of forgetting that the docs who are seeing them are really very compressed and struggling. I think I've gone on a bit there. So what am I doing? I have become a board member of Medicine Forward, and I am working my tail off to try to get Long Island a chapter in primary care for all Americans. So it turns out there are these 5 or 6 core organizations that are so skilled at advocacy and so skilled at messaging, and so skilled at trying to garner some resources for scholarships, for pipeline programs to keep students and residents in primary care. There's a lot of nice things happening, but boy, to organize it in a national way, I would love to see it happen.
Thanks, Eric. What are your thoughts? What can we
Well,
do?
well, I don't have the answer for primary care, unfortunately, and I was very curious, Frank, as someone who's teaching it, and understand how challenging it is to attract people when economic drivers are not
Yeah.
uh, facilitating primary care as a lucrative way to repay your student debt. The uh, I would One of the ideas you fostered, however, which I would love to see incorporated, is having scheduling that moment between patients. Beatrice has a non-insurance driven private practice, and it's not a concierge one. She just is a consultant, but as she's evolved, established 15 minutes between each patient that she can use for being able to do those kind of things. And I know when you're going to see 30 patients and you've got to see 15 minutes per patient, including documentation, and many of these patients are multiple problems, and you've got to check off your quality of care indicators, which really are often driven by maintaining sick care as opposed to actually quality of care. And you never get down to the things that you would really like to talk about with the patient. That's hard. But as in terms of ideas that have resonance with me, if there could be, a 5 minute between patients, assuming that you can get your documentation done, and AI might help with that. But if you can get your documentation done and then have 5 minutes to answer their problems so they don't bang into the end of the day, I think that would be a long-term solution that could work better.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. And it's a multifaceted problem that's going to require multifaceted solution, but doctors need a seat at the table. And not only will we have our topics and activities, but I'm intentionally building in downtime, extended time at lunch and time before dinner, and then the evening times for doctors to have any conversations they want with each other, right? In any size groups. And I do feel like we'll be able to catalyze positive change from this retreat. Doctors are going to have ideas. Following our physician advocacy session, we're going to ask what could we do, what should we do, action steps, and then some of those things, hopefully, we can just go do them without waiting for anybody else. And I'm sure, Frank, that you're probably familiar with Matthew Zachary with We the Patients.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's one, he is a voice of patients to advocating for change.
Yeah.
And I do agree with you that doctors and patients, like patients, we need to raise awareness. Doctors already know what the problems are, right? That part of my mission is that we do have to educate patients, and that we're all in this together. And as Dr. Kevin Poe said when I interviewed him for my 100th episode, at the end of the day, we all want what's best, the best care for patients, but I want to add, and not at the expense of the health of the doctors providing the care,
Right.
right? So we got to figure this out. So thank you so much. This is just the beginning of the conversation. I was wondering if you each have a one sentence take home action message for our audience.
I'll go first. Stand up straight.
Yeah.
If you keep your head centered over your pelvis throughout the day, and just take a moment to do that, take a breath and let it out while holding yourself there. That will help you to feel better. It's very hard to feel depressed when you're holding your head up high.
I'm going to practice a little jazz. I'm going to riff off of what Eric said. I'm going to say stand up straight. If you're in medicine, stand up straight. And what I mean by that is never lose sight of your values, never lose sight of what attracted you to the oath, and know where your sanctuaries are. Your sanctuaries are in the space of kindness that a patient needs you.
Mhm.
And in my case, a learner needs you. Um, and don't let that space be penetrated by anything. As a matter of fact, if you're in a place where you think that space is being over penetrated with other considerations, you might want to think about pivoting. Um, but I think chest out, standing up straight, chin up, because you're constantly being nourished by a reminder of your own values because you're always having that self dialogue. That's the name of the game, to defend yourself, and to it's the cocoon you must maintain to not just survive but to thrive.
Thank you. And I'll add stand up for doctors. So we all have standing up. So
Exactly.
thanks again for being my guest, Eric and Frank. I really appreciated this conversation.
Well, thank you, Kim, and I look forward to seeing you at the retreat in October and look forward to meeting you face to face, Frank.
Eric, we had a blast on this, and I'll meet you there. Kim, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, in closing, to move the needle in healthcare, we all need to raise our voices and we all need to care about each other. We already know that doctors need to care about patients. Patients need to care about doctors too. So, stand up, doctors, and let's stand up for doctors.
See you soon.
Be well.